You are currently wasting 2/3 of your garden space. Every single bed you plant with only one crop could actually be growing three. You are not obtaining even 1/3 of the food your garden is capable of producing. Furthermore, you are spending money on vegetables that you could be growing for free in the space you already possess. This is not about making your garden larger. It is about utilizing the space you already have. Most people plant one crop per bed, tomatoes in one, lettuce in another, and beans somewhere else. Between those plants, there is empty soil, which represents wasted space and wasted potential. That empty soil could be producing food right now, while your main crop is growing. Here is what this is costing you. 100 square feet of garden with one crop produces maybe 50 pounds of food in a season. That same 100 feet with intercropping produces 150 pounds. You are leaving 100 pounds of food in the ground every single season. Store-bought vegetables cost $3 to $5 per pound. You are wasting $300 to $500 of food every year from just 100 square feet simply because you are planting one crop at a time. John Seymour writes about this in The Self-Sufficient Life. He describes how traditional gardeners have used intercropping for thousands of years, not because it is complicated, but because it works. You grow 2 or 3 crops in the same space at the same time. They do not compete, they help each other. One provides structure, another fixes nitrogen, and another shades the soil to prevent weeds. This is not theory. This is how humans fed themselves before industrial agriculture told them to plant in rows. Here is the intercropping method. There are 5 combinations that work. I will tell you what they are, and then I will show you how to use them. Combination 1 is corn, beans, and squash, and this is called the Three Sisters. The corn grows tall and provides a structure for the beans to climb. The beans fix nitrogen in the soil, which feeds the corn and the squash. The squash spreads across the ground and shades the soil, which prevents weeds and keeps moisture in. 3 crops from one space. The Native Americans use this method for thousands of years because it works. Combination 2 is lettuce between brassicas. You plant cabbage, broccoli, or kale in rows. These take 90 days to mature. In between the rows, you plant lettuce. Lettuce matures in 30 days. You harvest the lettuce long before the brassicas need the space. 2 crops from one bed with different harvest times. Combination 3 is radishes between carrots. Carrots take 70 days to mature, while radishes take 25 days. You plant them together in the same row. The radishes germinate fast and mark the carrot rows so you know where they are. The radishes are harvested before the carrots need the space, and when you pull the radishes out, they loosen the soil, which helps the carrots grow straight. 2 crops from one row, and the radishes help the carrots. Combination 4 is onions between strawberries. Strawberries are perennial and stay in the bed for 3 to 5 years. Between the strawberry plants, you plant onions. The onions repel pests that attack strawberries. The strawberries fruit in early summer, and the onions are harvested in late summer. 2 crops from one bed, and the onions protect the strawberries. Combination 5 is tomatoes with basil and marigolds. Tomatoes grow tall. At the base of each tomato plant, you plant basil and marigolds. The basil repels aphids and whiteflies. The marigolds repel nematodes in the soil. The tomatoes provide shade for the basil, which prevents it from bolting in hot weather. 3 plants in one space, and they protect each other. Here is what most people misunderstand about this. They think intercropping means the plants are crowded. They think the plants will compete for nutrients and water. This is not true. Intercropping works because you are using different layers of the garden. The corn grows tall, the beans climb the corn, and the squash spreads on the ground. They are not competing. They are using different space: the ground layer, the mid layer, and the tall layer. This is 3-dimensional gardening. Seymour writes that the key to intercropping is understanding what each plant needs. Some plants are heavy feeders and need a lot of nitrogen. Some plants are light feeders and need very little. Some plants fix nitrogen. They take it from the air and put it in the soil. When you intercrop, you pair a heavy feeder with a nitrogen fixer. The beans fix nitrogen, the corn uses that nitrogen, and the squash is a light feeder, so it does not compete. This is not luck, this is planning. Here is how you plant the Three Sisters. This is the most productive intercropping combination. In late spring, after the last frost, you prepare your bed. Make mounds of soil about 12 inches high and 18 inches across. Space the mounds 4 feet apart. In each mound, you plant 4 or 5 corn seeds. When the corn is 6 inches tall, you plant 4 bean seeds around the base of the corn. 1 week later, you plant 2 or 3 squash seeds at the edge of the mound. The corn grows first and provides structure. The beans climb the corn. The squash spreads between the mounds. By late summer, you harvest all three: corn in August, beans in September, and squash in October. 3 crops from 1 mound. Here is how you plant lettuce between brassicas. In early spring, you plant your brassicas, cabbage, broccoli, or kale. Space them 18 inches apart in rows. Between the rows, you have 18 inches of empty space. Most people leave this empty, but you do not. 2 weeks after you plant the brassicas, you plant lettuce in between the rows. The lettuce grows fast. In 30 days, you harvest the lettuce. The brassicas are still small and do not need the space yet. You harvest the lettuce, and then the brassicas grow into that space. 2 crops from 1 bed, 1 month apart. Here is how you plant radishes with carrots. Carrots are slow to germinate. It takes 2 weeks for carrot seeds to sprout. You do not know where the rows are, and weeds come up faster than carrots. You cannot hoe because you do not know where the carrots are. This is the problem. Here is the solution. When you plant your carrot seeds, you mix in radish seeds. 1 radish seed for every 10 carrot seeds. The radishes germinate in 5 days and mark the carrot rows. Now you can hoe between the rows. The radishes are ready to harvest in 25 days. You pull them out, which loosens the soil. The carrots have more room to grow, and the soil is looser, so the carrots grow straight. 2 crops from 1 row, and the radishes help the carrots. Here is how you plant onions with strawberries. Strawberries are planted in early spring and spaced 12 inches apart. Between each strawberry plant, you plant an onion set. The onions grow through spring and summer, repelling aphids and spider mites that attack strawberries. In late summer, you harvest the onions. The strawberries fruit in early summer, so you get strawberries in June and onions in August. 2 crops from 1 bed, and the onions protect the strawberries while they grow. Here is how you plant tomatoes with basil and marigolds. When you transplant your tomato seedlings into the garden, you plant basil and marigolds at the base of each tomato plant, 1 basil plant and 1 marigold per tomato. The tomato grows tall while the basil and marigold stay low. The tomato shades the basil, which keeps it from bolting in hot weather. The basil repels aphids and whiteflies from the tomato. The marigold roots release a chemical that kills nematodes in the soil. 3 plants in 1 space, and they protect each other. Here is where most gardens fail. They produce a lot of one thing, and then that one thing fails due to pests, disease, or bad weather, and the whole bed is lost. When you intercrop, you are not depending on 1 crop. If the tomatoes fail, you still have basil and marigolds. If the corn does not do well, you still have beans and squash. You are spreading your risk. 1 bad crop does not mean no harvest. This is resilience. Here is what this produces. 100 square feet of garden planted with 1 crop produces about 50 pounds of vegetables in a season. That same 100 square feet with intercropping produces 150 pounds. You are tripling your production from the same ground with the same amount of water and the same effort. You are just planting smarter. Here is the math. Store-bought vegetables cost $3 to $5 per pound. If you grow an extra 100 pounds of vegetables from intercropping, that is $300 to $500 of food every season from 100 square feet. A typical backyard garden is 400 feet. That is $200 to $2,000 of food every year just from intercropping. You are not buying more seeds, and you are not building more beds. You are using the space you already have. Seymour writes that intercropping is not new. It is ancient. For thousands of years, humans grew food this way. They did not have the luxury of wasting space. Every square foot had to produce as much food as possible. They learned which plants grow well together, which plants help each other, and which plants protect each other. This knowledge was passed down for generations. Then industrial agriculture came along and told everyone to plant in rows, 1 crop per field. This is efficient for machines, but it is not efficient for food production. Intercropping produces more food per square foot than any other method. Here is what you need to know about timing. Not all crops can be intercropped. You need to pair fast-growing crops with slow-growing crops, tall crops with low crops, or deep-rooted crops with shallow-rooted crops. The key is that they do not compete. Lettuce grows fast while cabbage grows slow. Plant them together. Corn grows tall while squash grows low. Plant them together. Carrots have deep roots while radishes have shallow roots. Plant them together. When you understand this principle, you can intercrop anything. Here is what you need to know about nutrients. Some plants are heavy feeders, like tomatoes, corn, cabbage, and squash. They need a lot of nitrogen. Some plants are light feeders, like carrots, radishes, onions, and herbs. They need very little nitrogen. Some plants are nitrogen fixers, like beans, peas, and clover. They take nitrogen from the air and put it in the soil. When you intercrop, you pair heavy feeders with nitrogen fixers, or heavy feeders with light feeders. You do not pair two heavy feeders together because they will compete. This is planning, not guessing. Here is what you need to know about spacing. When you intercrop, you do not plant as densely as you would if you were planting one crop. You give each plant enough space to grow, but you use the space between the plants. If you plant cabbage 18 inches apart, there is 18 inches of empty space between each plant. That is where you plant the lettuce. The lettuce does not crowd the cabbage. It uses the space that would otherwise be empty. This is the key. You are not cramming plants together. You are using empty space. Here is the mistake that cuts your harvest in half. People see empty soil, and they think the plants need that space. They do not yet. That empty soil could be growing a fast crop while the slow crop is still small. By the time the slow crop needs the space, the fast crop is already harvested. This is timing. Most people plant everything at once and leave the soil empty between plants. You plant in stages. Fast crop first, slow crop second, or you plant them together and harvest the fast crop before the slow crop needs the room. This is how you double or triple your harvest from the same bed. Here is what you need to know about water. Intercropped beds do not need more water than single crop beds. In fact, they often need less. The squash leaves shade the soil, which reduces evaporation. The soil stays moist longer, so you water less frequently. The bean roots go deep, the squash roots spread wide, and the corn roots go deep. They are not competing for water. They are using different layers of the soil. This is efficient. Here is what you need to know about pests. Intercropping reduces pest problems. When you plant one crop in a large area, pests find it easily and move from plant to plant until the whole bed is infested. When you intercrop, the pests have a harder time because the crops are mixed. The pests cannot move as easily from plant to plant, and some plants repel pests that attack other plants. Onions repel aphids, marigolds repel nematodes, and basil repels whiteflies. This is natural pest control. You are not spraying anything. The plants protect each other. Here is what this really means for feeding your family. Seymour writes that self-sufficiency is not about producing one thing perfectly. It is about producing many things adequately. Intercropping does this. You get 3 crops instead of 1. If one fails, you still have 2. You are not depending on a single harvest. You are spreading your production across multiple crops, multiple harvest times, and multiple sources of food. This is food security. And here is what this means for your workload. Most people think they need more land to grow more food, but they do not. They need to use the land they have better. Intercropping does this. You triple your production without adding 1 square foot of garden space. You do not dig more beds, you do not water more area, and you do not weed more ground. You work the same amount. You just plant better. A 100 square foot intercrop produces as much food as 300 feet planted with single crops. You do 1/3 of the work and get the same amount of food. This is efficiency. Now here is how to start. You do not need to intercrop your entire garden at once. Start with 1 bed. This spring, plant the 3 sisters, corn, beans, and squash. Follow the method I described. 4-foot mounds, corn first, beans when corn is 6 inches, and squash 1 week later. Watch what happens. By late summer, you will harvest all 3. You will see how much food comes from 1 bed. The next season, you expand. Plant lettuce between your brassicas, plant radishes with your carrots. Each season, you add 1 more intercropping combination. Within 2 years, your entire garden is intercropped, and you are producing 3 times more food from the same space. Seymour writes that the goal of the self-sufficient garden is to produce as much food as possible from the smallest space. Not because you do not have more space, but because every square foot you cultivate is work. Digging, planting, weeding, watering, and harvesting. The less space you need to feed your family, the less work you do. Intercropping reduces the space you need, reduces the work you do, and increases the food you produce. This is smart gardening. Here is the shift you need to make. Stop thinking of your garden as rows of single crops. Start thinking of your garden as layers. Ground layer, mid layer, and tall layer. The squash uses the ground, the beans use the mid layer, and the corn uses the tall layer. All three are growing in the same space. They are not competing, they are cooperating. This is how nature works. A forest does not grow one species at a time. It grows many species together. They use different layers, different nutrients, and different light levels. Your garden can work the same way. Space is not the problem. How you use space is the problem. Every square foot of empty soil in your garden is wasted potential. When you intercrop, there is no empty soil. Every inch is growing food. This is the difference between a garden that produces 50 pounds and a garden that produces 150 pounds. Same ground, same water, same effort, 3 times more food. Picture this. It is late summer. You walk into your garden. In one bed, you see corn stalks 8 feet tall, beans climbing up the corn, and squash spreading across the ground between the mounds. You harvest corn, you harvest beans, and you harvest squash. 3 crops from one bed. In another bed, you see cabbage heads forming, but a month ago, you already harvested lettuce from between those same cabbage plants. 2 crops from one bed. In another bed, you pull carrots, but weeks ago, you already harvested radishes from that same row. 2 crops from one row. This is intercropping. This is 3 times more food from the same space with the same work. This is how you feed your family from a backyard garden. This is what real self-sufficiency looks like. It is not about having a huge garden. It is about using a small garden efficiently. The Three Sisters method feeds a family from a few mounds. Lettuce between brassicas doubles your greens. Radishes with carrots gives you 2 harvests from one row. This is how you feed your family from a backyard garden, not by making it bigger, but by making it smarter. Intercropping is the method. 3 crops from one space. This is how you triple your garden. If this strategy changes the way you look at the empty soil in your backyard, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the ancient agricultural wisdom that modern industry has tried to bury. Cultivate your future. The next treasure of knowledge will be revealed soon.